Hi, welcome to episode 2 of the Heuristic Method series. In this episode we're going to cover the Specialization Heuristic and pattern ratio alteration. The reason I'm covering two heuristics in one is because I tend to get better results cycling between these approaches. So let's get cracking. Specialization heuristic is another way to use limitation in order to spark creative experimentation. The idea behind this heuristic is simply to temporarily limit our pattern use to 1 to 3 techniques. Staying within 3 techniques should keep things fairly simple and give us a slight advantage when it comes to later remembering what it is we actually did. Also, remember that we will be manipulating up to 3 techniques in multiple ways, so it's best to be very familiar with the techniques you are choosing to use so we can use our working memory for remembering new combinations rather than recalling how to perform a particular technique we are using. There are many ways to use specialization to your benefit. When we specialize with only one technique, we are forced to focus more on spacing and pattern time warping, which is a term I use for slowing down or speeding up aspects of the technique. Here is an example with chirps. When we specialize with a 2 technique limit, we can start to develop simple interleaved runs between techniques. This is also probably the most useful limit amount when you start to develop longer combination runs. Here is an example with chirp flares. When we specialize with a 3 technique limit, we can start working on slightly more complex and nuanced runs, which are still simple enough to remember without too many problems. Here is an example using babies, chirps, and flares. Ratio alteration is another very handy heuristic for creating simple combination variations. This involves focusing on and altering the occurrence between techniques. I like to think of it as akin to making some food and knowing the ingredients to use, but not having a clear idea of how much of each ingredient is needed. So we experiment on the amounts to be mixed. I tend to use this approach almost exclusively with a 2 technique specialization limit. The reason for this is that if you add more than 2 techniques at a time, it can start to become difficult to understand and keep tabs on the occurrence amounts, making it more difficult to remember what you did later on. Also, if you are familiar enough with 2 techniques, you can perform them without thinking too hard, and then your ability to zoom out and focus on monitoring and altering the occurrence of each technique is improved. Here is an example of using ratio alteration to create some new variations with chirps and OG flares. that's it for episode 2. I hope you got some ideas to help you with your self-practice. If this is still a little basic and obvious for you, be sure to keep a watch out for the future videos in this series, which will start to cover some of the more peculiar heuristics as time goes by. If you would like to give back and help me make better future content, please check out my Patreon page and pledge whatever amount you feel comfortable with giving. Depending on how much you pledge, you can receive exclusive tutorial loops used in the tutorials, TTM phase sheets of each of the patterns covered in the video series, and even limited availability private lessons via Skype. Thank you, and see you next time.